So we've arrived at the very, very final session of this day, and we've decided to focus it on building resilient organizations and leaders. So a fairly hefty topic to finish the day with, but for that I have some wonderful guests who I'm going to call upon to the stage. First of all, Adriana Delshorts, Vice President of Deák EF Corporate Learning. We have Réka, Deák, Head of People Resilience and Inclusion over at Zurich Insurance Group, and we have Mahshid, Khademi, Senior Researcher at the Competence Centre for Diversity, Disability and Inclusion over at the University of St. Gallen. So please, make yourselves at home. First of all, we have 4 women on the panel, which is, I see rarely, so that's a brownie points for us there. Now, if I ask anyone in the room what they would define as resilience, I think everyone would give us very, very different answers. So maybe from your perspective right now, can you just tell me how you've defined it personally and also from the company's view? From EF, Adriana.
Thank you, Olivia, and hello, everyone. We're going to make this short and sweet. We know you're hungry. So to us, resilience, it's the ability to adapt constantly at speed without losing our core, which is our mission to open the world through education. So we have different programs from very young students all the way to adults with cultural exchange, with language learning, which of course brings this resilience in terms of the outcomes naturally. But how we deliver this constantly changes. Since we started 60 years ago to today, of course, we have AI, we have many other different tools. So this ability to adapt is what resilience means to us.
Mahshid, can you give us a more academic look at what resilience means?
Yes, I was actually trying to sound not too academic, but let's do that. From the definition, resilience means capacity to, first of all, anticipate what's coming, then absorb the shock, and then create these learning loops and create these stronger teams after these learning loops come into functionality. So it's a multi-process.
And what's a loop for you?
So basically, as an example, if something comes to your team as a shock, then seeing it as a learning challenge, an opportunity, and then see what is going on, what we can do better, and then implement it next time in the next shock. So that would be like a learning loop in place.
Réka, you have a very different look at resilience. It's all about personal resilience, burnout, mental stress, financial stress. Give us your view there.
All right, maybe I would go a bit broader, because for us as an insurance company, resilience means a lot of things and areas, including climate resilience. We even have a business resilience solutions business line. So we also started to think about people resilience, and we thought a lot about it, as you said, also on the individual, personal level and on the organizational level. So on an individual level, it's people's ability, similarly as you said, to sustain, restore, or even strengthen their well-being and performance through challenging times. And on an organizational level, it's similar. However, it's much more complex, because it's not only about building individuals' resilience, but the whole work environment. How can we, as an employer, as an organization, foster that?
Today, in today's climate world, we are talking about disruption and crisis, and it seems that we don't really know what's coming around the corner. And I think you mentioned adaptability and this ability to, deal with whatever's coming next. But those are very nice words. What does that look like in practice? What actually makes a company adaptable?
It's a great, difficult question. But I think just having fun with being able to live with ambiguity, meaning that reinventing ourselves, it's the normal thing to do, rather than just waiting for a crisis to come and then thinking, oh, how do we now resolve this as a team? But just constantly questioning how are we doing things, why are we doing things, and how we deliver these things, and constantly innovating and being at this forefront of innovation makes ambiguity not something that we're scared of, but something that is natural. Because I think nowadays, 2026, we are in a volatile environment, and it is the norm to have uncertainty. So to embrace that and to even have fun with just reinventing ourselves, I think that's what keeps us resilient as an organization.
Mahshid, you talk to a lot of business leaders as part of your research. What are they telling you about adaptability and about resilience? What do you see there in terms of patterns?
Yeah, I actually wanted to follow up on your point that resilience is not built through crisis, it's actually revealed by crisis. So there are multiple steps before happening and revealing it. And one of them that is common, at least through our research, is psychological safety climate. So a climate that actually people can raise their voice and raise their concerns, and especially through crisis, it's super important to have very rapid transfer of knowledge, to be able to decide on point, on time, what's going on, what's happening, and what we can do. So in a psychological safe climate, this is actually happening very easily. The other thing that come to my mind is about inclusion. So when we have inclusive leadership in place, different agents within the team, within the organization can raise their voice, come up with innovative solutions in crisis. And that is another motor, let's say, to foster resilience in a crisis.
Réka, how are you trying to implement that over at Zurich Insurance, that everyone can show up to work and not be afraid to challenge the system or the status quo there?
So first of all, I have to say it's really important to know that it's not a one man or one woman show. So we really need.
We know you're not in charge of that.
Everyone on board, especially in such a big organization as also Zurich is. So diversity of the countries, cultures, it's really given. So that's when resilience meets also the different needs. So there is no one size fits all solution. So you have to respect those local needs. The society around the company in certain places. So this is definitely the starting point. And you need to have a North Star as a company, what you stand for. And then within that, you can give, of course, the flexibility to these groups of countries to implement that, as you said. Definitely one of them is psychological safety, and it doesn't happen through training, or it's a lot of role modeling, and both from the bottom up and the top down, how we can really live this culture. What is important for us as a North Star, and I am sure other companies also talk a lot about performance, high performance culture. So we also started to talk about sustainable high performance culture, which is gives another dimension of resilience, not only to be tough all the time, to toughen it out, but also to ask for support if needed or prevent it. So we also try to put a lot of emphasis on prevention, not only reaction. And also this is, if we look back to our business perspective, this is also what, as an insurance company, we want to stand for, to prevent maybe a crisis situation, not only react on it.
So let's be more concrete here, Adriana. What situation has the company faced where the resilience has really been tested, and how did you get through that?
It's a great question, and we've been around for 60 years, so we had a lot of big crises. Of course, COVID is the one that most of us have experienced recently, and on one hand, we were, of course, heavily affected because many of our divisions we actually were sending students abroad. So we had to stop from one day to the other. Other divisions, we were already teaching languages online, for instance, so we were ready. But overall, how it did impact our organization as a whole is that we have a very strong culture. We are very diverse. Just here in Zurich, we have 1,000 employees with 60 nationalities. And we were used to working together every day, to inspiring each other, and just being isolated was a big challenge on its own. I personally have 2 small boys, and during COVID, our oldest was very small. And to work from home with him at home, that was a challenge on its own. And we had some programs, like mindfulness programs, to actually meditate, to take a second, to acknowledge, and to be very honest with our own teams, saying it's okay, it's not easy, and to be having this even safe space virtually and being together, even if we were not physically together, I think that made us stronger.
Mahshid, do you have a case study that you can also bring up?
Case study about resilience. I can think of, actually, it's not a case study, it's actually longitudinal study. We were looking at people with different level of health impairments through time for a year and a half. And we looked at their absence behavior. So how often they took days off during their health impairment crisis, let's say. And what we noticed is that, first of all, everyone can guess that the higher the health impairment, the more days off someone would take from work. But what actually was interesting to us was that leaders play a fantastic role, meaning that not necessarily only relational aspects, but proactive, healthy leadership aspect played a role significantly decreasing the number of absence days within all the different groups. So it shows, at least to me, that it's not necessarily health impairment or any sort of contextual or demographic factors, but also there are like these networks that we have at work that comes very important in terms of crisis management.
Réka, can I come back to you on the topic of personal resilience here? Because we talk a lot about organizational resilience and what leaders should do, but what about personal resilience, the individuals themselves?
To give an example or just talk about it?
Give me an example there so we can visualize it.
Yeah. So here I would like to mention that we recently worked together with the Oxford University on a personal resilience index to really, both for the customers and internally, so that we would like to use it in the future, because this is really about understanding how different domains and dimensions are behind resilience, what we also know as mental, social, financial, or even digital, and it was important for us to really understand how this can be measured, and then how we can connect it back to the business performance and of course the well-being of the people. So this is something that is a research in progress. So we are now seeing or experimenting with it, with the results, and going back to a company example, because I was also thinking about that, and of course COVID is always something that comes the top of your mind, but as an insurance company we also faced a lot of natural catastrophes. And it's not only challenging then as a business, but how those people who work on these cases react on it and make sure that they do their work, but they also react in an empathetic way for the customers, or how this impacts them. So Zurich implemented a company-wide empathy training for people to also foster this empathy towards customers, and that makes also the individual more resilient, plus the company in these crisis situations.
So I think now is a good time. Can we just take a look at the room? Who within the organization, whose organization is investing in some sort of adaptability, resilience program right now? Okay, a fair few, let's say half in there. So I wasn't to point anyone out there, but McKinsey research points to an underinvestment in resilience and adaptability. If I can just point out one statistic, they say only 16% of global employers currently invest in that, especially in continuous learning programs. What is holding that back? Because from what I've gathered, it seems that it's pretty fundamental and central to a successful organization.
Yeah, I can answer that also based on what I said. So we try to build something which is measurable. I think sometimes businesses try to find quick fixes, short-term solutions, and this is not always leading to resilience. So you need to also try to measure it to really adapt to the business environment. Where is the problem based on numbers? And of course, you can always have a qualitative analysis as well, but based on quantitative numbers. And then based on that, you do initiatives, interventions, and then you also measure the impact. And I think that is sometimes the problem, that this is still considered as a soft topic. People don't really see the numbers behind. Even if we talked about this, there are really striking numbers on mental health and also how much this costs. We are really in this process of building up the business case. But also there are good cases out there which help us.
Adriana?
Yes, I'd like just to add on your thought that many organizations, they solely focus on the efficiency outcomes. And it's truly important to really see adaptability and resilience as a growth engine. It truly is something that it fits well embedded in every day as an organization. Whenever a crisis will hit, we will be ready and keep running.
Can I follow up there? So there's obviously adaptability as an organization, but within individuals, everyone deals with change and risk and stress quite differently. So how do you know, let's say, that everyone in your team is actually adaptable?
Thank you. That's a really good question. And connected to what you were saying about this safe space, but what does really having a safe space mean? I think that everyone shows every day at work, being their true self with this honesty we were talking about before, not being afraid to speak up, to share what we think, and very important, not being afraid to make mistakes. I think that is fundamental, because when we have this fear, this culture of fear, we do not take risks. And when we do not take risks, innovation is not there. True diversity, true inclusion doesn't really happen. So I think as leaders, it's really important to foster that environment and to be very honest and vulnerable ourselves as well when something happens, and express that together.
Adriana believes leaders should be enforcing that, but I know also from your perspective, there needs to be much more than that. There needs to be systemic change. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, actually, this is what I wanted to add to your point, that I'd like to think about resilience like, let's put a metaphor, because I have a little bit of a background in engineering. And when you make like these spaghetti bridges, do you know those spaghetti bridges that can, they can hold some, like, couple of kilograms? So the resilience of such a structure is not coming from the spaghetti straws. It's not even coming from the nodes. So it's coming from the whole system, the structure, the architecture, the arcs, the angles and everything. So these coming together, to me, is at least the environment, the climate, the organization that makes things possible and resilient when there is a shock coming. So the nodes and the straws, leaders, teams, members, obviously can hold some capacities to resist, but it's the whole system, the whole network should be built in a way, in a psychological safe environment, and in an inclusive manner to actually be able to resist in the face of unprecedented crisis.
So, Mahshid, I'm going to stick with you. If there are people in the audience right now who are reflecting on their own company and thinking, oh, I don't think we're the most resilient. We get quite overwhelmed whenever there's a shock or uncertainty and something coming our way. What is a good step for them to start building and including resilience?
I wondered if you're a leader, I would say invest on building a psychological safe environment within your team, and building these spaghetti straws yourself within your team. So basically having these networks that support each other even when you are not there. So a strong team building, we have these team building activities and we don't know exactly what we're doing so many times, but this is actually mainly the simple basic team building and strong climate that can support each other in the face of crisis, even when the leader is not present. The other thing is inclusive leadership. I would recommend any leaders to get to any sort of training about inclusion and about healthy leadership style, which is a proactive and not passive attitude towards the health of the employees, because we are in a very, very unprecedented, unpredictable mode of life and work at the moment.
Réka, what else can we do beyond having a nice offsite?
Very good question, and we saw it also that research showed that one DEI initiative doesn't change the world or the company. The same research has been done with well-being initiatives. Really, they showed that all these, which I also do and believe, like mindfulness workshops, but they just cannot solve the structural and systemic problems. So that's why we need to rethink how we work. And when I was listening to the AI panel, I just saw that, I thought that, yeah, this is even better, this momentum, because through AI, we also have to rethink how we work. And then the question is how we can do that in a healthy way or a more resilient way, so that we don't only just think about automation, but augmentation in a way that we can use that time for ourselves, for individually or collectively, to then create a healthier work and life.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for sharing your takeaways, sharing your answers, but also giving us room to reflect on some questions now over lunch. So with that, put your hands together for our wonderful panelists for today. Thank you so much.